Don't look now. The Pirate Bats have come alive, at least on this night, as the Pittsburgh Pirates pick up a 7-2 victory over the Cincinnati Reds, avenging last night's destruction at the hands of the Reds. The Pirates now 15-20 on the year as they even things up in this particular series and go for another one of those series victories in that next game to close things out. I'm your host, Mike Asti, and this is a Pirates edition of Pittsburgh Postgame on Pittsburgh Sports Live. I am going to be joined by Nubyjas Wilborn of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette to discuss this game, discuss this series a little bit, and discuss the news and notes around the Pittsburgh Pirates, who, again, a decent outing by Brubaker. They get a victory for him this time. They haven't recently. The bullpen holds. They get some run support. So this is a game that you actually have some positive to talk about for the Pittsburgh Pirates, just 24 hours after a thumper, to say the very least, against Pittsburgh. Nubyjas, thanks for joining me, man. First off, I definitely appreciate this. We talked about doing this a little bit in the past. I know you were on with Alan once, so I'm glad I get to talk with you. And then just to get us started here, they win this game. They rebound from the beatdown of a night ago, which I guess is a positive for a team, especially going through a rough season, that they're able to rebound and come back and not just let it just unravel into atrocity, which I don't think anyone would have been surprised if that would have occurred. But the headline has to be the starter, just because Brubaker is honestly, and this is serious, building an all-star caliber season. I mean, he very legitimately has an all-star caliber season right now. Another solid start for him. Goes five or six, one run off 5 hits, 1 walk, 4 strikeouts. So the strikeout to walk ratio is still solid. It's not the 8-9 strikeout game that maybe have had from him in the past. But just overall, has he become somebody that you have confidence in moving forward after this year to really stabilize this rotation? It's now been a month or two into the season. He is still giving you solid starts. And how much of this did you expect entering this season from him? Because again, he's putting an all-star caliber season together.
Well, I mean, I have more confidence in him than having Mitch Keller right now. I'll tell you that.
That's fair. That's very, very fair.
But, and that's no offense to Mitch. I know he's struggling and dealing with some things and trying to still put it together. But, you know, JT's a guy who he had some injuries, season-ending injuries for the last couple of years. And this kid kept fighting, kept showing up, and now he's getting the payoff. And yeah, the Pirates got him under for a while. So, you know, I would hope they'd hold on to him. I mean, seriously, it's really tough to discuss the Pirates like a serious baseball team. And I
imagine how it is for me with these post-game shows. I'm trying to think of new topics and new things to discuss.
I covered it full time for a bit, and I still dabble. I still which is why I'm so glad to get to do this. I do enjoy Pirate fans. I feel bad for them because it's like, fam, like if you care about a team winning, I don't understand why you invest in this team. But if you just want to watch baseball, because I will tell you this, you know what? I like watching their games. They play hard. And I know certain radio hosts here don't like to say team plays hard. I think that is something that's commendable. Because, yes, they're getting paid, but these are still 26 of the fewer than 20,000 men who've ever put on a Major League Baseball uniform.
Sure, yeah.
Regardless of people say, you know, people make the jokes, well, they're a 4A team or whatever. And okay, yeah, you say it to JT Brubaker, who for 2 years spent trying to rehab and trying to get back, and now is performing well, and like you said, could possibly make an all-star appearance. You tell that to Colin Moran and Brian Reynolds, a guy who is fighting back from some injuries. You go tell that to, you know, you look at Adam Frazier, who's on a 12-game hitting streak right now. Now, will he probably get traded if the Pirates get something for him? Sure. But right now, he's a Pittsburgh Pirate, and this is where he plays his baseball. This is where he makes his living, the thing that he's dreamed about his whole life. And he's giving it his all.
Sure.
And that has to be respected. But it's also difficult to talk about him like Well, yeah, sure, they could build with JT Brubaker and they could grow it when it just doesn't feel like the last few years they've shown any propensity to wanting to build anything. And I don't know what their plan is, to be quite honest. I know what they say it is.
Right, right. No, that's always different than what it literally is, for sure. And again, speaking with Nubyjas Wilborn here of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, Pirates win this one 7-2. And I did, to my credit here, some might know, I did say they played hard in this game. And you got to give credit to play hard in this game after last night, because again, you could totally let it unravel. And Brubaker, legitimately, has put together an all-star season. ERA below 3. He has been you hate to throw this word out there, but he has been their stopper. He has been their best pitcher. He has been the nearest thing they could even dream of being an ace, has been him so far this year. Tyler Anderson has been decent so far. What I do want to also ask you, because when they were winning, when they were above earth, because they now have come back down to earth recently. They're now 15-20 on the year. When they were above earth for the 2-week period earlier in the year where fans were telling us, oh, how could you be so down on the Pirates? Look at your predictions. They're above 500, all of that going on. And I'm sure you see this too. I threw out a tweet and got some replies, but they're very quiet right now. They're not in my chat right now. They were all up in the chat on post-game shows 2 weeks ago when they were above 500. So,
hey, man.
They're very quiet right now.
Listen, and okay. So, from a perspective of looking at a roster and doing the thing that we do as professionals, right? Like, we take the emotion out of it the best that we can, and we evaluate what's happening in front of us, and then we try to disseminate that information to the people.
That's
we try our best to do it. You know, now some people maybe do it with Twitter beefs at players who get traded or cut, but hey, those of us, what, you know, if it gets you on Yahoo, maybe it works. But for the rest of us,
I got that notification, was like, it worked.
Right. It works. Listen. There are that part works. But for those of us who actually want to just talk about baseball and what happens on the field and why it's relevant. Yeah, listen, the Pirates, they got out to a decent start. They won some games. You also got to remember, I talked to Alan when I think it was during a spring training game when I was on with him, and it's tough, man, because hope springs eternal, right? And the old first day of the season, everybody's 0-0, and also we're still coming off the remnants of COVID. I mean, we just saw Fernando Tatis and some of those guys on the Padres got it, and with contract tracing guys have to be out.
Yeah, half the Yankees coaching staff.
Yeah, like fam, like this ain't like, and I said that to Alan, I'm like, you will have some times where the Pirates might win a series, because they might play the Padres and Fernando Tatis is out.
Which happened. That literally occurred.
Yeah. And so wait a minute, I think it's the second time he's had some stuff, which again is a thing that happens. So you might get a team, because if you're to say they're not going to play the Yankees in it, but if they were to play the Yankees, their coaching staff is out, and maybe some other players, and you might catch them in Judge and Stanton are out for the series, and you might get 2 out of 3 from that. Now, would you beat the Yankees if you played them 20 times? How many times would the Pirates beat the Yankees? Do they play? Both teams are at full strength. They played 20 times.
4.
Probably not so many, but
you're right. I guess, I hear what you're saying for sure, but I will say, and I'm not normally the most optimistic guy around, and I certainly thought this team would lose tons of games. They're still on pace, mind you, to lose over 90 games this year. I think.
But it's better.
They were on pace for 69 wins last night. So maybe they're not going to lose 100, but they're still going to be really, really bad. But they were playing better than I would have thought. I mean, you look at the beginning of the season last year, it took them 2 months to win a series. They won a series in the first couple of weeks. So to their credit, that did occur. What I do want to ask you, though, at that point when that was happening, they were getting production from the offense, kind of surprisingly, because Ke'Bryan Hayes was out of the lineup, and they were getting production from Phil Evans and some other members of the lineup. Brian Reynolds, who's still giving it to him, Paul Moran, who's hurt.
Jacob Stallings.
Yeah. So they were getting production from the lineup, which you got to have to win. They were getting it then. They went on a 2-3 week bender. Like, they got drunk offensively. They couldn't score any runs. They were getting shut out back-to-back games. They couldn't get over the 2-run barrier in 3-4 games in a row. They score in this one after, of course, last night, not so much, and getting beat down. What would be the lineup for you that you think is nearly the best recipe? Is this lineup earning another go? What do you do with this lineup? Because you mentioned Todd Frazier, who you're alluding to. He's now gone. You bring in a bunch of young kids for the outfield. Polanco's toiling. He's not healthy, but he's getting paid $11 million and clearly not what he used to be. But do you get him back in the lineup when he's healthy because you're paying him a lot and maybe he can showcase himself to get traded? Who knows? Phil Evans went from hitting 320 to now hitting 220. Does he earn more time? Like he finally got back in the lineup today. What would you do with this team? What should Derek Shelton be doing with this team? Or are you okay with him throwing a different lineup at the wall like a dartboard every game and just seeing what sticks?
I mean, shit, what option do you have? I mean, you just said it. Like, Phillip Evans went from hitting, 3 whatever to 222.
Yeah.
We talked about Todd Frazier. They had to let him go because he was 1 for 31, and the only reason you can let him go is he wasn't making any money anyway.
Right.
You can't let go of Polanco yet because he's making too much money, which sounds ridiculous when, the payroll is, $48 million?
Well, do you want to see Polanco in there when healthy, or do you want to see these young kids, I guess, is a question.
Okay. See, the problem here, Mike, is you're asking these questions as if though this is a relevant baseball team, and I'm not trying to be funny.
I hear you, but what in terms of the Pirates?
I know, but okay. I mean, all right. If we're talking about them being a relevant baseball team,
okay,
then I would want to see the younger kids, and I probably would DFA Polanco. Because his production just has not shown it.
Yeah, but that's not going to happen, right?
But that's not what's going to happen because they're not a relevant baseball team. So what they're going to do is try to play Polanco as much as they can, hope he gets it together enough so they can trade him to get some more young kids in there. Now, is that what I would do if I wanted the team to ever be relevant? Probably not. But my name ain't about nothing.
It is not, fortunately or unfortunately.
I wish I had his wallet though.
Yeah, I'm saying, I think I wouldn't mind.
I get it for a night, just for an evening to have a really good time.
yeah. So I wouldn't mind having his name or even having the last name for a day or so. Yeah, that would be nice for sure. Here,
until somebody cuts you out in the street, but
it depends on where you go and when you go there, I guess. But speaking with Nubyjas Wilborn here of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, Pirates win this game, but of course, this is a season that doesn't mean much in terms of wins and losses. It's part of another rebuilding mode. But Ben Cherington, to his credit, you can't blame him for the past. He's new to this. He's won before, but obviously not in this situation. I think that's important to note too. People point to, and I'm not saying the guy isn't the right fit here. I think he's actually done some solid moves. But people do point to Ben Cherington having a ring. He won it with a big market with the Red Sox that spent $200 million. Totally different, right?
But also too, not just a big market, but owners who were invested.
Right.
I mean, here's the thing. Man.
They can fix it quickly, and they want to fix it quickly if they
Mike, have you met Bob?
I've been around him before, yeah.
Okay. He's actually, and again, I know the people who will watch this, they will tweet me. It's at M1Board19. Same thing they said when I covered the team. That was too nice to him. I mean, you know what?
He's a nice guy, though. He wasn't rude to me.
He's a nice, he's a kind human being. Like,
he dances around some questions and isn't really honest sometimes, but that's what they do.
That's what they all do. I mean, they're not going to tell us, oh, yeah, we're trying to suck. I mean, they're not going to say
right.
I mean, but the other thing, too, is, like, I've had dinner with him, and he paid. He even paid for it.
Okay.
And it wasn't McDonald's. He let me upside the fries. Okay. No, but seriously.
Okay.
I will say this, and I
get a steak. Where'd you go? Lobster steak?
Well, we're down at Brady Night Steak Restaurant, and went down to it was. I mean, we sat and we talked about baseball and life and situations, and so here's the deal. And while we're here, I know we're talking about the current team, but I do kind of want to expound on this point a little bit.
Sure.
Is his thing is going back to when Kevin McClatchy owned the team. The Pirates, and as people know this, were in a very dire situation.
Oh, yeah.
It was very dire. The franchise was in a dire place. Right. I mean, literally not being able to make payroll to the point. They were that close. It was very ugly. If you don't get the stadium built, if you don't get things going, that team is out of here. And I think for Bob's perspective, what he decided was, I'm never going to let it get to that point. Because, you look at like Illich in Detroit who passed away. And because what people are like, the Eagles, when they went to that Super Bowl in the '80s, the man who owned the team then, he died broke.
Yeah.
Illich died with some bad situations, and Tom Gore is, and I think for Bob, he is very much like, hey, this is not my family business. This is what I want to leave to people. I want it to be here. And he's trying to play it safe.
Yeah, you can respect that in a way.
I don't agree with it because I came up in the time of where owners treated these things like toys. They just spent the money, threw the money, kind of similar to the newspaper industry. Didn't make any money, you just threw money, right? But so I'm saying is what has happened in baseball, and really what's happening in all the sport is these owners have figured out they don't need to win to make money.
For sure. 100%. 100%.
And to be honest with you, you almost get penalized for winning because the returns on it, and there's really good articles in Forbes and other business publications, which again, I know fans don't care about that, but it also is relevant.
Right.
Because once these owners have figured out, hey man, we don't got to really spend that money to win. The problem is the Pirates just go too far. they don't even try to pretend like they're pretending to try to win. They just take it way too far.
Yeah, because you hear from people too, and I get asked when I appear on other people's shows on well, why can't the Pirates do what, say, the Royals did when they won back-to-back pennants and they're a small market?
You know how much luck it takes for that to happen?
Well, there's three things that occur. Number one, for sure luck. Number two, you got to have the farm system be really bumping because when they did that, that was before they had to spend some money. They had a farm system that was bumping. That's what's happened with a lot of those teams that are small market that do win. The Rays, for example, they really retooled the farm. They're not spending money and they're able to win. Number three, and this is another option for small market teams to hit a small window and try to go from trying to be respectable, say 2013, maybe a little bit beyond that, to try for a championship, which the Pirates didn't go that extra mile. You have to be willing to potentially go in the red for a year. The Royals went in the red and they won a couple pennants and won a ring. Sometimes you have to be willing to go in that direction. Nutting and the Pirates are not going to be willing to do that.
No, it's just not what it is. And I mean, now will they spend more? Sure. Like, let's say if Mitch Keller becomes what they think he becomes. Let's say if JT Brubaker can repeat what he's doing here. We talked for a while here. We hadn't gotten on Richard Rodriguez and what he's been able to do out of the bullpen. I mean, he looks like the guy they thought he was going to be back in 2018, 2019.
He looks like the trade piece this year.
Yeah, he looks really good and he's in his zone. And now, unfortunately, he's probably going to get traded, right?
That's what I'm saying. And we were going to get there. He looks like the guy that's probably going to be dealt for value, and the bullpen's actually been good this year. I do want to ask you something off of this conversation too. Would you say it's fair to say that because they do have now a new regime in, they are trying another rebuild, and this time, to Cherington's credit, they are admitting this is a rebuild.
Hey, they're transparent about it. Yeah, tell you what it is.
Yeah, so in the past, they would kind of dance around it. I would have them on shows. They would say, I don't know. We're trying to. No, they're willing to say this is clearly a rebuild. So I got to respect that too. So because that's the situation and you're not going to dance, you're willing to say this is a rebuild. And clearly this isn't wins and losses this year. Is it fair to say that this was a season that if you're a fan, and they might not like me saying this or get this either, you shouldn't even have wanted them to spend money this year. This wouldn't be here to spend money. What's the point?
Well, I mean, what are you going to do? You going to pay Greg Blanco some more money? I mean, sure, you just do that. I mean, seriously, what are you going to do? I mean, they tried to re-up on Brian Hayes. We don't know what's going on with his injury situation. They've been very mum about it. Brian barely answers he barely answers my text these days. And he'll text back or something, but not about what's really happening inside. So at least his thumbs work to text. I mean, what's up with Cole Tucker down there? Is he ever going to get back up? What's that going to look like? I saw Jeff Hartley got the call up, and is he going to be able to put it together on the major league level? He's been trying for a while. He's got that sinker. He's got some talent. I still remember back when, again, it's a spring training game, take it for the word, but back in 2019, bases loaded in Tampa, Yankees, and you got Judge and Stanton come up after Stephen Brault walked the bases loaded, which was speaking of that, what's going on with Stephen Brault? Is he going to be able to get back this year? What that's going to look like? what's up with him? That would be nice because, I mean, talk about your ace. That was your ace. So anyway, long story short, what were you going to do to spend money on? Who were you? Think about it. Who are you going to get as a free agent who you could pay money to, who want to come here in this situation?
Yeah, and really, what would the point would even have been? Nobody would have wanted to come, but what would the point even been? Really?
I guess you
maybe trade someone at the deadline if you could have moved somebody like that. Or if they were going to do
anything, I would have been okay with them keeping Josh Bell. If you're going to do that,
sure.
But what have his numbers been?
Yeah, and that's another thing that last year was really a detriment to the rebuild process, not only just for COVID, but Bell was not good, and he was clearly a player that if he could have performed, that could have been a value piece, that if you had to move on from him, you could have got a lot more for him. That wasn't the case because he just was atrocious most of last year. Reynolds wasn't good last year. Some conversations were, would you already try to get something for him? And clearly he's back and hitting now, so he might be a piece to the future. But yeah, things didn't work out last year in terms of the value they could have got. Yeah.
I mean, I'm looking now. I mean, I just pulled it up. He's hitting 141. He's got 3 bombs, which is
and they've really dealt with COVID, the Nationals.
Which again, and this is when I remember talking to Alan about this. I'm like, hey, this year's going to be weird, guys, because you are going to have times where you're going to have guys getting COVID. Even as people are getting vaccinated, you're still getting people who are vaccinated getting positive tests.
Right. Yeah.
Now, again,
it's in the NBA already. Right.
Yeah, and it's happened in baseball. So
yeah,
I mean, like I said, in a way. Sure, will there be some opportunity for the Pirates to sneak and win some games that maybe they probably wouldn't or shouldn't, or a series or two they wouldn't or shouldn't? Because, again, they catch the Nats when they have COVID, or they catch the Padres or whomever. Sure, but right now, I mean, they're a 90-loss team.
Yeah,
they're lucky to do that. They are. Which is where they should. I mean, listen, there are some wonderful young men on that baseball team. Like, seriously, really good dudes who are trying to live their dream and playing good and trying to make it happen. Because here's one thing, and Mike, you know this, man, and this is something I try to explain to fans who don't have the access that you and I are very blessed to have and get to actually talk to these people and be around them. The players always want to always want to win.
You're good.
Yeah, the players always want to win because you don't do all that work to lose. So if you can't, so listen, if you go into a clubhouse and you ask those guys before the game, and I've done this, hey man, what y'all gonna do today? Maybe we're gonna win. I mean, it could be.
Yeah, what are they gonna say?
Yeah, I mean, but no. But even like just shooting the bull with a guy,
right.
And they could be on an 8-game losing streak. He could be 1 for 31, and he's going to say, "Well, today's my day,"
right?
Because like, you don't get to that level.
That's what I was going to say. You got to think that way. You wouldn't get to that level. Right. That's why I hate when anyone criticizes any athlete ever because, he said he's the best. How arrogant was that? He got to think he's the best. What is he doing if he doesn't? Right. Man, so you're setting him up for disaster if you don't want that answer.
Like, so what are you going to do? You going to step in the box against Max Scherzer and it's automatic think you're an automatic out?
Yeah, because baseball's a mental game, maybe even more than other sports, that if you go into that one-on-one matchup and you're not confident, you're done.
Of course I could get a hit off Oral Hershiser or whomever.
Right,
of course you could dig up Christy Batterson from the grave and I get a hit off him.
Sandy Koufax, yeah.
Yes, it does. Yeah, because, I mean, you have to because how difficult it is to even get there and then how more difficult it is to stay there.
Absolutely. On this current team, obviously, Ke'Bryan Hayes, if he's healthy and depending on the storm of weirdness that's kind of been going on this year, so maybe we'll leave him out of this. Brian Reynolds has played really, really well. And you mentioned there are some solid players here.
Funny how that works for Reynolds, by the way. Remember how everybody threw him away? Oh, he's done.
Yeah. He's back.
Got to the rough start. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Hitting 292 2 years ago, had a great year. That might have been a bit above what you expect normally. I don't think he's going to get a double every single night like he was 2 years ago. But last year was a bit off for him. And it does appear that he's more of 2 years ago than was last year, which is certainly good for the building block of this team.
Like, you mean to tell me that playing a 60-game season after having an abbreviated spring and then
right, for a young player.
would possibly throw you off a little bit.
Hurt your development a little bit.
Shocked, right?
Right. But like, obviously Reynolds is in the mix there. Hayes is going to be in the mix when things get back to normal. And obviously there are members of this bullpen, Howard, Rodriguez, that are probably going to get traded. Polanco's on an island of no longer being really a contributor and probably going to be moved or gone in the future. Of players on this current roster, who stands out to you as a player that you think will be a part of this rebuilding process for the next couple years, that could be part of this team whenever it has a chance at winning again, even if it's for a 2-year blip like it was 5, 6, 7, almost a decade ago at this point? Colin Moran, any of those, like anyone else? Or is it just Reynolds? Is there anyone else that screams to you that this guy's young enough, that he's not getting paid that much, that he's not going to be moved, but he might be good enough to Cherington will keep him around for a couple years?
Jacob Stallings.
Okay.
I mean, now I know he's not necessarily in the young group, but at this point,
I like the answer.
I mean, but listen, he's a legitimate major league catcher, which I remember going into 2019 spring.
Yeah,
you didn't know. And then he got DFA'd.
Yeah,
and nobody in baseball picked him up, which how the Pirates able to get him back. And
he did well last year. As weird as
absolutely, he did well. Listen, he had a good 2019.
Yeah.
He had a good 2020, and he's having a good year now.
Yeah,
I mean, at 28, it's funny how that goes, right? At one point, back in 2019, it's like, oh, maybe he's too old. Maybe he just can't get it done. Maybe it's too late. His time has passed him by. Now he's young as a catcher, which is also funny because we realize that, well, it takes catchers a little longer to develop.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would say of anybody.
Their shelf life's also shorter, though, unfortunately. So that's the only thing,
man.
Unfortunately.
Being on those knees, man, it takes something on you, especially tall guys, because, his height was a concern, right?
Yeah.
It's like, well, is it going to work? But now, I mean, you look at him, he's a good defensive catcher. He can hit.
Yeah.
He can run a little bit on the bases. He's a smart baseball player, and he's a guy who, I hate that cliche leadership stuff, but he's really got it, man. Like, his teammates love him.
They respect him. He can be a mentor in a way.
Yeah,
throwing that word.
He can get after it. Like, he's not like listen, he's a good Christian man from a hardworking family. I know that
we know his family, right?
Yeah, I know that name here. Doesn't exactly.
He's improved the name. That's one thing he's done. You hear that last name, it's not negativity all the way.
Hey, he definitely has increased the value of the Stallings name in the city of Pittsburgh. Absolutely.
Right.
But seriously, he's a good leader. Sure. I think he's somewhat I'm not saying he's Carlton Fisk, or I'm not even saying he's Francisco Cervelli at his best. But,
right.
But he's a guy who you can actually build around because he knows how to work with pitchers. Hell, I can't think of how many damn pitchers he's counted in the last 3 years. I mean,
and maybe honestly, what nobody's doing, to be fair here, yes, JT Brubecker's having a great year. Yes, Tyler Anderson's been able to pitch long into games, been better than some would have thought. And Mitch Keller has been a roller coaster ride, of course. Mm-hmm. But maybe the success of some of these starters that's a little better than people would have thought. Maybe we can throw some credit at Jacob Stallings as well. Maybe it's
you mean the good pitch framing catcher is
right.
A little bit better.
You don't hear that, but I feel like there could be some credit in his direction, right?
But that's why my old friends down in Atlanta just brought Tyler Flowers back again.
Right,
he's 34, brought him back, and they're like, well, if nothing else, we know whether now again. Some people kind of get weird about pitch framing, right? But here's the thing.
Well, some catchers for certain pitchers, Doug Mirabelli for years was brought in for certain pitchers in Boston when Veritek was the all-star guy. If a pitcher likes a catcher, they're yours.
That's what it is. But also, too, you talk to those Pirate pitchers about him, and they just rave about Jacob. They loved him. Even when he was the backup to Cervelli, I say, man, we love working with Jacob. We love doing bullpens with him. I mean, so he's a guy to me, which, again, typically the phrase coach's son is cliche, particularly obviously it's being an NFL town. You hear those kind of words, it kind of sounds like a dog whistle. But in this case, you get that Jacob comes from a stock of someone who is able to teach and effectively communicate with people. He even speaks some Spanish because he gets in with the Latin pitchers, and
that's
guys,
big. That's big.
Yeah.
Especially for the farm system. Yeah,
absolutely. And he meets them at that level. Like I think he's gonna be a manager one day. But as a current player, he's a guy who definitely makes pitchers better, and that's something that matters. Now, could the Pirates look to trade him? Maybe, if another team really wants him. But it's also it's still wild to me, which also goes to show you how life works. This man got DFA'd, and the industry said, "Nah, we good." At a position, you think about a position of catchers. I mean, how many great catchers?
Yeah, there's honestly, currently there's almost none that are legit elite catchers.
You still got Yachty.
Yachty at the end of his career, right?
At the end of his career, you still got Real Muto. I mean,
it's not a deep catcher era.
Yeah, as I say, it's like the fact that we're sitting again, and like we're two guys who watch baseball, and the fact that we're sitting here, like, how many? I mean,
yeah, I mean, there was a time period where you had Posada, Pudge. You had 3 or 4 that were. It was hard to even get on an all-star team at that point. Not the
you said
case
Posada.
Right
don't
now.
forget Piazza. Don't forget
Piazza, of course.
Yeah. I mean, you had What people say, like you had good catchers. I mean, and now it's like you think about it, like you used to know the catcher for every team, and you used to know who he was, and Gary Carter, all those type guys, and you just. It's not to say so. The fact that the industry passed on a catcher says a lot about what people thought about him and where he has gotten to now.
Yeah, and any people out there who maybe don't follow as closely that are the support of what we're saying is if you play fantasy baseball, try to find a catcher that can stay in that lineup and actually produce anything for you because it is rough going.
Yeah, well, that's the other problem. Well, that's the other problem too for catchers is because of how focused you got to be on, and particularly the other part is with these bullpens expanding. And that's the other part we don't talk about because back when catchers were catchers in that way, when men were men and catchers were catchers. But you didn't have as deep of a bullpen. You didn't have to work with as many pitchers. Can you imagine? And because they didn't have the shuttle bus now, what they call it, the taxi squad now, where these pitchers are
COVID,
Yeah, but even before that.
Well, sure. Yeah. And this year's also been different. The Pirates' bullpen's almost been different than most teams currently in this era because they've had to have these bullpen pitchers come into games in the 4th or 3rd inning. They're almost long relievers when they're supposed to just come in there and be a setup man. Most teams, you don't see the pen until the 7th inning and it's 1 or 2 guys.
And you're
6. This is 4 or 5 pitchers. You're going 6 innings generally. Now tonight, again, they only have to come in late into a game because Brubaker was able to go 5. But
and imagine how that worked for the team. Hey,
they're able to win it.
Because Brubaker went 6 tonight, right?
He went 6 in this game, and Tyler Anderson went 5. He gave up the 1 run. Yeah, so Brubaker went 6, gave up the 1 run, so you're able to have a legit bullpen with Rodriguez and Howard and Bernard. Those 3 are the legit bullpen force. Earlier in the year, it was I mean, when you're talking about Stephen Brault and Mitch Keller starts, the third inning, we're seeing the bullpen. So obviously that's going to just throw in everything in the garbage.
Well, I try not to, and the funny thing is I try not to like do the old man, you know, when I was watching the game thing, right?
Did you walk 6 miles to and from school every day as well?
Yeah, with snow, even though I lived in Atlanta, right?
Right.
Yeah, I walked 6 ways, up the hill both ways the whole night, right?
Up the hill both ways, yeah.
Right. But seriously, this is a part of baseball that is concerning where you have these bullpen guys who are getting taxed every single night, getting used, and then when the guy needs a break, Magic has an injury.
Yeah.
Then he's got to go back down. So, like, you know, you see a time where a guy will come out when, you know, Mitch Keller has one of those 3 inning starts, guy pitches 4 innings, and then the next day he's back to Indianapolis. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I hear you.
But what I'm trying to tie that into is the other point I was trying to make was back to Stallings and why this is relevant is what happens with him is he has to work with so many pitchers.
Yeah,
because you got guys shuttling back and forth. One day Jeff Hartley was here, then maybe a week later it's insert, whomever, whomever it is.
He's preparing him to be a manager someday.
Yeah, so you have to deal with all those pitchers. You have to get them in, get them on signs. Every guy has their own signs and all that stuff.
Yep.
And then planning games with the starters, still making sure all those bullpen guys are taken care of. And every other day you got somebody new coming in you got to deal with. When do you have time to focus on your hitting?
Yeah, and he's still hitting decent for a catcher. Obviously not, hitting the cover off the baseball. He's tailed off a little bit recently, but you have to take it in with a grain of salt as a catcher too.
Yeah,
if he can hit 260 with what he's doing with the pen, that's legit. So he's definitely been a bright spot for this team. He's been an unsung hero for this team. Honestly, you could argue if they're going to give this award to somebody. Team MVP might even be his way. At least,
here's the other part about. Here's the other part about Stallings.
And Reynolds, of course, will get it probably. But
you can't really whine about strike calls when you're at the plate, when you're going to want those same calls when you're behind it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And that has an impact on the hitting because it's like you can't question maybe a strike that was 2 inside or 2 outside because you're going to want that call later.
Right. No, that's the catcher's paradox as well. The Pirates win this one 7-2. They're now 15-20 on the year. Nubyjas Wilborn of the PG joining me. I do want to kind of get us out of here with this, and it's more of an overlying baseball question as well. They will finish out this series against the Reds. See if they can win another one of these series. The Reds are certainly a beatable team, but we saw what happened just last night to the Pirates, so it certainly could go the other way quick. The Giants, Cardinals coming up. And of course, more young kids to watch for. This lineup just keeps being tinkered with and tweaked with every day. But again, that's kind of the point of this year and the rebuild. But Nubyjas, I do want to ask you, because this has been the last week and a half, this has been the talk around baseball. Whether it's 4 or 5, depending on your opinion on how many no-hitters we've seen to this point throughout a season. But it seems like every day I turn around, there's a pitcher going 7 innings, flirting with a no-hitter. The Pirates almost were no-hit to tie it back to Pittsburgh with J.A. Happ a few weeks ago. And Joe Musgrove, former Pirate pitcher, threw a no-hitter first in Padres history earlier in the season.
By the way, shout out to Joe, man.
Yeah, and great for him. Yeah, I especially being from there and how cool that was for that franchise that has accomplished things but never had that. So I don't think he's going to all of a sudden become the Cy Young winner, but that was a great thing for him. But you've had 4 pitchers with legit no-hitters. Bumgarner goes 7 and also ends up throwing no-hit baseball through the 7. Doesn't count officially, but the win counted officially, so we'll leave that for another day. Why are we seeing so many no-hitters right now? Will this continue? Is there any hypothesis?
How you going to ask at the end of it? Because this is like a philosophical as well as analytical. It's a very difficult question that you asked here, but
I like to ask some tough questions in the middle here. We can give you a few minutes. We don't got to. I'm not trying to run. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. It's a tough question to give a succinct answer to because there's so many factors. I mean,
there are.
The increased propensity towards.
It's more than last year, though. It's more than the year before.
Yeah.
We already got 5, and we're 2 months into a season, or a month and a half into a season. We might not see another one for months with how baseball is, but it's just weird.
Well, baseball's always weird, which is one of the things why when I cover a team.
That's why I love baseball, honestly.
Yeah, exactly, because every day, which again, it's okay. So it's like one of the sicknesses and great things about if you are a ball writer, right? Because you got to go to the park every day. Even if you're not writing today, you got to go to the park.
Sure.
Because you never know. You never know what you're going to see. But that being said, I do think that the pitchers seem in some ways to be a little bit ahead, the good ones. Also, too, the hitters. The strikeouts are up. Look at it. Like, the strikeouts are up. It's bad. Right now, it's bad. And it's a concern. The pitchers, the good pitchers right now are ahead of the hitters. They just are. And that's the easiest answer to it. But also, too, I think you are starting to get more pitchers that are like, hey, man, let me go. Don't just hold me. Because finally, but also, here's the other part. The good pitchers are becoming more economical with their pitching. Because, and this is something I've talked to several pitchers about over the last. I'll say, not what I ask, because, to me, it seems silly. But, hey, if you know you only have 100 pitches, why are you throwing all those balls? Because you only got 100, they're only going to give you 100. That's all they're going to give you.
Yeah. This isn't like the old days. They're going to hook you quick. Yeah.
Yeah. So
we've seen pitchers get hooked with a no-hitter going.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like, if you know they're only going to give you that many pitches, whether you agree with it or not,
right? Why
waste them?
Right.
And guys really couldn't answer it. The guy's like, well, I got to do this. And then, whatever. But it's also like, if you go in the game and okay, they got 100 pitches. So I think part of it is the pitchers are throwing more strikes, at least the way it looks, the way it seems. Now, of course, is all those umpires with the boxes on TV and, what's this, the Sally League of it was the Atlantic League. I'm sorry. They're getting ready to try to robo umps again.
Yeah.
And so, the umps are kind of concerned about calling tight strike zones. Are strikes? I mean, are the balls actually proper now? Because for 2 years, Rob Manfred went out and told us that there was nothing wrong with the balls. Us media folks are just making it up. Then they come back and fix the balls without ever addressing the fact that they were messed up in the first place.
Right.
And that factors in this.
Well, that's the roller coaster ride since the quote unquote steroid era, even though it goes on a little bit still, where you had teams setting records for home runs, including the Yankees that have had all those home run hitters over the years. They set a record for the team home runs a couple years ago. And now 2 years later, we're seeing 5 no-hitters in a month and a half. So it's a definite.
Yeah, but all the strikeouts. I mean, I think hitters' timings are off. It's a lot of things. Again, you got the COVID stuff and you got.
Yeah, COVID.
I mean, it's tough, man, because here's the other part about COVID. Just because a guy is cleared to play baseball doesn't mean he's not still dealing with COVID symptoms or remnants or impacts of COVID. That means he's not still dealing with it because we don't know. Because when you talk to Jaylen Brown and those guys at the Celtics, you're like, hey, we're using inhalers now after games.
Yeah, that's crazy.
You know what I'm saying? It's like I never had asthma. And I'm a pro athlete, and I need an inhaler.
That's insane. Yeah.
And again, I'm not trying to get into COVID stuff because I know people get weird about it, and I don't like to really even engage those conversations with people anymore. I feel like whatever side you're on that thing, is where you're gonna be. But
for sure.
At this point, man, that's where you're gonna be. But anyway, so to tally it up, there's just a lot of weird things happening in the game of baseball, and some of it I think baseball needs to address. And some of it, I think they need to just course correct. Because you don't want to start like playing with the mound height, and you don't want to start playing with the distance and all that stuff. Because they'll try to tinker again. I think that's one of the problems. It's kind of like, remember when Josh Bell was here and he got the Tinker Bell name because he was constantly, tinkering with his swing and all that stuff, right? I think Major League Baseball sometimes tinkers too much.
Yeah. They do. Sometimes they don't. And maybe they've been accused for this in the past of not tinkering enough, and being slow to adjust to things.
Mm-hmm.
But then it does seem like it always goes that way. And you know this too. If somebody is accused of not being quick enough to react and not tinkering enough, their quickest reaction is then to tinker too much.
Right. It's never like, okay, what's really happening here?
Right. So we'll see what happens the rest of the season. We'll see what happens next year if we ever get back to closer to normalcy. Maybe that will fix some of this. It has been a weird ride to this point. Again, it just to have 5 no-hitters to this point, it almost takes away a little bit from the pitchers. I'm glad we got to give some to Joe Musgrove because these pitchers aren't even getting national publicity. It's like, ho-hum, there's a no-hitter today. There's going to be one tomorrow.
I think it's just a weird time in sports right now because here's the thing. Like we used to talk about no-hitters like, okay, yeah, that happened, and then we move on. But now
it was rare also.
It was, but it's so weird. There was one point where they were more commonplace. Then it became rare. Then now maybe it's I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah, and conveniently enough, it became rare with the exception of Hall of Famers or legends like Randy Johnson during the heyday of the steroid era.
Exactly.
Obviously. And now it's a little bit more prevalent where there's a much more stricter regimen in terms of testing. So that could be a coincidence or totally not one. We'll see.
There's a lot going on, man.
Yeah. I mean, besides Randy Johnson, it was a little, and Pedro, it was a little bit non-existent for a while.
Here's the part, and this actually is important. All right. Because we talked about COVID. We talked about not just COVID people getting it, but also to the time off, the weirdness, because guys still aren't quite all the way back on normal schedules. So that's going to be a thing. And two,
Oh, yeah.
you're seeing those PEDs get up. Here's the thing. I'm going to say this here. I want one athlete, one time, just one time, or a horse maybe.
Keep it topical. There you go.
One time, just one time to say, you know what? I took them PEDs. You want to know why I took them? Because I'm trying to win. I'm trying to make this money.
Yeah.
Y'all paying me this money, and I want it, and I want to earn it.
Right.
And I'm trying to get back out there. I'm trying to recover from this injury.
Instead, they wave their finger and can't speak English anymore.
Oh, I don't know. I ate some tacos, or I ate some steak somewhere, or first.
Or here's my favorite, and this is what Barry Bonds said, but here's my favorite. I didn't knowingly do it. It throws the caveat in where, if it's in my system, I didn't know. A trainer gave me something there. I didn't know. Like, come on.
It's in my water, man.
We've covered enough athletes. When you get to a level where you're a Hall of Famer, you know what's going in your body, man.
Listen, at this point, no, but not even that. At this point,
any
man,
level, really, right?
Really, to be honest with you, once you get past about 10 years old and you're good at sport,
what's going on. You should.
You know what you're doing.
You better know
the
what's
nutrition.
Going on.
Well, because you got these kids have trainers so young and all this stuff. Especially they go to college, they got nutrition plan. Come on, man. Now again, listen, I'd
love to hear it too, but we're never going to get that.
I don't mind them doing it. I mean, now you get caught, you get punished, but like I'm not going to be like. One of the reasons why I still stay active in BBA because I want to keep my Hall of Fame vote, and I want to earn my Hall of Fame vote, God willing. And I would vote for I would vote for a PED user if I felt he was a good baseball player.
Right.
That's not a strikeout for me. Where oh my God, you never. But that being said, yeah, you're gonna see more PED positives because guys are trying to get back.
Yeah,
I mean, and like Edgar Santana last year.
Well, I was going to say the one star that comes to mind who for a while was on a Hall of Fame path and never going to get near it now is Robinson Cano. He actually popped back on Twitter yesterday. If you saw that, he put it in Spanish. I'm back on Twitter. He's been in the mix of PDs for years now. And you almost got to argue stupidity to just continuously keep getting caught now. But
the getting caught part is.
Right. I mean, he's getting caught multiple times, and this era just comes off a little stupid. But that's where we are right now.
Yeah, but the other problem is once you pop dirty, you start getting those randoms more, and
you got the public perception stain.
Yeah,
it almost doesn't even matter vote wise at that point.
Right.
It is interesting too how you ingratiate yourself and whether or not you admit it, because we've both seen this too. Alex Rodriguez was a pariah when he wouldn't admit anything. Once he retired and goes on Shark Tank, and he's very open that I took steroids when I got all the pressure of a big contract. Everyone loves him now.
Well, because people can understand that. That is something that even us regular Joes who make regular salaries, we can understand. Because if we're to be real, hey man, if somebody told you right now, not to say you don't love where you work and what you do, but if somebody told you right now that, hey, you can host the 6 p.m. Sports Center, I'm gonna give you these pills.
Yeah, right, of course. Yeah.
Are you asking what's in them?
Yeah.
Are you going to ask? Is it going to kill me or not? Right.
Right.
You taking them pills?
Right. No, for sure. No. Yeah. We got to go here, but I think the annoyance also stems from some would say that certain athletes were already a Hall of Famer. They didn't need to go from 600 home runs to 700 plus. It wasn't necessary.
Yeah.
Or you're going to say,
you know what?
You're going to have my only annoyance in terms of the Hall of Fame is when you also get into the territory of certain writers I'll vote for this guy, but not this other guy. Like if the resume is Hall of Fame caliber and you're going to vote for one steroid user, how are you not voting for the other steroid user?
I think that's silly. I mean,
there's hypocrisy there.
If I think you're Hall of Fame, I'm voting for you. I don't care about the rest. Now, even with other situations, I don't even want to go there, but also too with other things, people are more understanding than we give them credit for if you just don't try to insult their intelligence. Like, come on, man. Like we know what you're doing. We know why you're doing it. And even with if I have $1 million, I don't need another $1 million. But if I could get another $1 million, I want it.
Yeah. And there's some solid books to read about all of this. Game of Shadows is one, kind of getting in the mind of some conversations that I wish we would ever know if legitimately actually occurred, but I kind of believe they did from who reported some of those. So I think a lot of it is, for me, getting my intelligence insulted, because when you say you didn't knowingly do it, or when your first response to some of those press conferences is, well, when you get the question asked, well, you can come clean my closet when your closet is clean. It's we're all dirty, but I asked you a question, bro.
Like, you about you. But also, it goes back to people being honest about what the team is doing, which is why I talk about the Pirates, and they're finally telling us the truth. Hey, we're rebuilding.
Yeah, so that again, that's how we'll tie it in. So that's a positive thing. Nubyjas, I definitely appreciate the time, man. We'll definitely have you back on and can get philosophical with this again as we trek through this season. Maybe do some other shows to get really in the weeds. I definitely appreciate the time for sure. And I will catch you later, whether on one of these again on Twitter, or maybe once we're able to go have a beer somewhere as well.
Awesome, man. Would love to, man. Be good, man.
All right. Have a good day, man. Have a good night. And definitely, again, appreciate the time. That was Nubyjas Wilborn of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I love those conversations. I know we got a little bit away from the game, but I love those conversations, getting real philosophical about baseball history, connecting it to now. And let's keep it real, as he kept it real. This team is not about wins and losses on the field this year, so it makes sense to go in those conversations, have different shows every now and then. The Pirates do win this game 7-2, to keep it relevant to today. They do win this game 7-2. They do have their offense show up for this game after not the night before. We'll see in the final game of this Red series if they can snag another series win. They've had a few this year, as weird as that sounds to a year ago. Giants, Cardinals coming up, teams that won't be easy. Again, they're getting offense. If they get offense, they'll have a chance on some of these starts, not on some other starters. There's a lot to be desired with this team, but a lot to watch for in terms of what they do with the outfield. Jacob Stallings is that bright spot. Brian Reynolds continuing to ascend. And if Ke'Bryan Hayes will ever return to the lineup. Those are just some teas to throw out there and to keep in mind, to keep watching this team for the rest of the way. The Pirates win this one 7-2. They're now 15-20 on the season. They're now significantly under 500, and they have now come back down to earth. Again, I can't hear you guys out there. I can't hear all those critics that were mad at me for making a comment about this team still not being good when they're above 500. You're a little quiet, but this team now 15-20. They played above themselves for a while, no longer. They do win this game, though, 7-2. And keep it here on Pittsburgh Sports Live for the rest of our content, the rest of our video content throughout our myriad of sites. Penguins playoffs starting up, of course. Obviously, Pittsburgh Sports Now is the mothership. Still Steelers videos churning from Steelers Now, etc. Even WV Sports Now over there covering the Mountaineers, and Nittany Sports Now. We got the whole region going here throughout the Now family of networks. Hit that subscribe button, bottom of this video. It'll help us get all of our content to you. It is free to hit that button. Thanks to our sponsors. Thanks to Nubyjas Wilborn of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette and all of us here at Pittsburgh Sports Live. I'm Mike Asti. The Pirates win this game. They're now 15-20 on the year. But what are you watching for? What individual players are you watching for? What does this season mean to you? Think about all this. Let it all simmer to you as you're sleeping tonight. What are you really watching for in this rebuilding process? And what could be made of this season at that trade deadline? Who are those pieces that are going to be moved? What value could they get back? What do you do with Polanco? When will we have an answer with Ke'Bryan Hayes? When? I'm getting a lot of off-the-record conversation on Hayes. When can I get some on-the-record talk about what's going on with Ke'Bryan Hayes? That'll do it for this one.